Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Ah, that's a nice tune, Soul Serenade, and that's by our next guest, the one and only Dave Specter. He's a man that's had a huge footprint on the music scene here in Chicago and on the North Shore. He is a co-partner in Space, a wonderful music club in Evanston. He has 30 years of recording under his belt at the one and only Delmark Records, and we're really glad to have him. Good afternoon to you, Dave.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's been a long time coming. I've heard about you for a long time, and Lynn Orman, our music producer, always speaks very highly, and I think tried to get me to come meet you when I was there for the Mo Better Brown show. But as I recall, I got out of there in a hurry for some reason, but that was a great show. In fact, I've been to a few shows up there. Another one was with Lori Bell and James Cotton. I really had a great time, and I want to commend you on putting together a music club and keeping it going for 16 years.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that.
How about telling us a little bit about your time at Delmark and your recording there? 30 years is a long haul on the same label.
Yeah, it's actually been longer. I signed with Delmark in 1990. So what is that? 34 years ago, and I did my first record came out in 1991. I actually have a history with Delmark and the Jazz Record Mart before that, because when I left college in Champaign to come back to Chicago to be a blues musician, I got a job at Delmark when they were on Lincoln Avenue in Lincoln Square as their shipping clerk, and that was in 1985. And I also worked part-time at the store, the Jazz Record Mart down on Grand Avenue. So I got to know Bob Kester, and I worked there for less than a year and started playing on the blues scene. I was playing on the blues scene then. And then when I started my own band in 1989, I approached Bob and said, "Hey, man, I want you to come out and hear my band with this singer that I know you like, Barkin' Bill Smith," who Bob had heard many times over the years. And Bob came and heard us and signed us. So that's how it started.
Ah, nice. You know, I got to tell you a little story about the Jazz Record Mart. When I was a sophomore at Lake Forest College, I was doing a paper for sociology on the socialization of the jazz, of Black jazz musicians. And I went to the Jazz Record Mart, and I remember meeting Mike Bloomfield and Charlie Musselwhite, who were hanging around there playing then. You know, I was just a kid. And then I did bring Bloomfield and some other musicians up to Lake Forest. Anyhow, enough of that. We did have Bob Kestner on the show way back. Tell me about, you've got a double album celebrating your 30 years at Delmark.
Yeah, I believe in 2021, my double live album came out. It's called Six String Soul, 30 Years on Delmark, and it's a retrospective of a lot of different recordings I've done with a lot of different people, from Jimmy Johnson to Otis Clay to Jack McDuff, speaking of jazz, and Steve Freund and many others who I've collaborated with on my recordings over the years. And it came out on vinyl and CD.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into being a musician, and particularly a blues musician.
I come from a very musical family. I grew up in Hollywood Park, near Northeastern, around Bryn Mawr and Kimball. My older brother, who's almost 70 now, used to go hear Howlin' Wolf and Muddy and tell me about him. And my parents loved music. My mom was a classical pianist. They listened to the Midnight Special on WFMT, and listen to people like Big Bill Brunzi and Leadbelly. And I remember hearing Muddy Waters. I don't know if it was on the Midnight Special or one of my brother's records, but you know, I'd been listening to the Stones and the Beatles and the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers. When I heard Muddy, I was like, this is blowing my mind. It makes those other bands sound like kids. And it just spoke to me and moved me in a very powerful way. I went down to Champaign for college, which is pretty much when I started playing guitar. And, you know, I fell in love with T-Bone Walker and Magic Sam and Freddie King and Otis Rush. And then I started seeing a lot of these people in Champaign or at places like Biddy Mulligan's, which would let me in with my fake ID. And I just immersed myself in the Chicago blues scene and started playing with people like Sam Lay and Hubert Sumlin when I was really young. Jimmy Johnson kind of took me under his wing. Steve Freund, who you might be familiar with, who was Sunnyland Slim's guitar player, along with the guitarist for Coco Taylor and Otis Rush and many others, was kind of my mentor. He taught me a lot. He took me on the road with him. Sam Lay took me on the road with Hubert Sumlin when I was like 22. So I dove in as a sideman. I got my first big road gig was with Sun Seals. When I was like 25, I was with Sun for almost 2 years. We played the East Coast a lot, played New York City a lot, Boston. And then I decided to start my own band in '89. And that's basically the beginning of it.
You still got that band going?
I do. I still have a band. We're still playing around town. We just got back from a sweet little tour of Spain. And right after we got back from Spain, we had a date at Space and recorded it. And we were working on, I'm working on the mixes right now. We have 15 tracks. So it might be another double album. We got a lot of music and I'm real happy with the live recording.
Nice. Well, you mentioned Space and I mentioned it at the intro. Why don't you talk a little bit about it? I first learned about it from the late, great Stuart Rosenberg. And he told me that it was happening and it took a long time for me to go there, but I have been up there a few times and really have enjoyed it. It's pretty impressive. I drive by it almost every day when I go to the Y up there. And why don't you tell a little bit about how it came to be, how a group of musicians came together? You started a studio, you started a club, and the kind of things that have gone on there.
So we've been open for 16 years now. And I'd say starting about 18 years ago, I used to meet with some of my Evanston friends, including Craig Golden, who's kind of the main man behind Space and also has the Salt Shed and Thalia Hall and Promontory. But I've known Craig since college. And Craig and Stuart and I used to meet in Evanston pretty regularly. I think it was on Thursday nights. And, just kind of talk about this dream of having a club and a studio and a restaurant. And Craig bought the building. I think it was on auction. And he lives right around the corner in Evanston. I've always lived in the city. And that's how it started. And Stuart, it had the name Space, I think, from a previous venue that he ran for a short while. I think it was a little storefront or a little kind of hidden alleyway club. And Space stands for the Society for the Preservation of Arts and Culture in Evanston. Or as a DJ on WNUR called it, Dave, what's that place called? The Society for the Prevention of Arts and Culture in Evanston? I like that, but no, we are proud of what we do, and proud of how much the community has embraced the venue, and people come from really all over the country sometimes to shows there.
What are some of the highlights, some of the acts that you really stood out for you, or particular shows?
Yeah, there have been so many. That's
why I put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorites were Alan Toussaint, the first time he played for us. I mean, that made me cry. It was so powerful. It was really like having musical royalty in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Thompson blew my mind having him. When we were planning the club, we had like this list of like dream musicians. And we just had John Hyatt for 3 nights just within the last month. And he was on the short list of like people we could only dream about having. We just had him for 3 nights in a row. But I'm really proud of a lot of the blues stuff that I helped book or book directly. People like Pine Top, Lonnie Brooks, Magic Slim, Hubert Sumlin, Jimmy Dawkins, Jimmy Johnson. We've pretty much had a who's who of Chicago blues, and I really love New Orleans music. We've, my phone ringer is a ringtone from the Meters. We've had George Porter many times. We've had Aaron Neville, we've had Leo Nocentelli, we've had Ivan Neville's band Dumpster Funk. So I mean, I love New Orleans R&B. And then we've also had a lot of great jazz. I know you mentioned the Jazz Record Mart. I mean, we've had Chick Corea, we've had Ramsey Lewis, John Schofield, Joe Lovano, so many heavyweight jazz cats. It's been wonderful.
That's a great list. I mean, I got to say, I did see Alan Toussaint once, along with Irma Thomas, on a boat going up the Mississippi during the Jazz and Heritage Festival. And he is one of my favorites. But all those people you mentioned, almost all of them I know and enjoy and have records from some of them. What do you got coming up that people should know about on the music front up there at Space? I understand that you do... you play often on Monday nights during your Blues Monday shows. Is that a true thing?
Well, what I do and have been doing for a number of years is helping to curate a monthly Blue Monday series. It's usually one Monday a month, or sometimes we do it on a Tuesday. But our calendar has been so full lately with national touring acts that we haven't had it quite as regularly as we used to. We do have a Blue Monday coming up with Stephen Hull, who's a really, really fine, younger, up-and-coming blues man. You know, it encourages me to see younger musicians who are embracing this music and playing it the right way. There aren't a lot of them. You know, I've been spoiled, man. I came up on the blues scene where you could go hear Otis Rush and Dave Myers and Lewis Myers and Coco and Junior and almost every night of the week, and it's not even close to being anything like that right now. So we do have some younger players like Stephen Hull coming up on a Blue Monday, and a really fine young piano player named Ben Levin. He's coming up in August. We're doing a lot of outdoor summer festivals, including the first, hopefully, annual Evanston Folk Fest in early September, where we have some blues. We have John Tavius Willis on that. We have Corky Siegel on that. And then we do the Out of Space series this summer, which we usually do at the Canal Shores Public Golf Course in Evanston. They're doing a little construction this summer, so we're doing it in Skokie this year. And we have people like Courtney Barnett, St. Paul and the Broken Bones. Everything is easily found at evanstonspace.com.
Speaking of evanstonspace.com, I have 3 different websites for you. evanstonspace.com, bluesfromtheinsideout.com, and Dave Specter, that's ER.com. All good, and people should go take a look. One of the things that really rang a bell with me is you seem to be a guy who at some point started carrying a camera with him. And that's true in my own life. And I do have pictures back to 1960. I have one of Muddy Waters at a place called the Fat Black Pussycat with James Cotton. I'll send you a copy of it. But you've been taking pictures, and I understand that a lot of them you've taken at Space, but you now have a show that's going up. And in fact, it opens on June 1st, the night that this show will air on WLUW. It will have already aired on Lumpen Radio, and it'll be up on YouTube. So people could go see some of your photographs. Tell us about you, a camera, the pictures you take, and what's going on with all of them together.
Yeah, thank you. I've been in love with photography since I was a kid. It runs in my family. My dad was a photographer. My older brother. I remember taking my Olympus OM1 SLR to see the Grateful Dead at the Uptown, I think in 1978, and took pictures there and used to shoot concerts when I was in high school. I learned how to use the darkroom, and I kind of gave it up between my love for basketball and my love for blues guitar. I kind of didn't quite have the time to pursue photography until the iPhones and smartphones came out with amazing cameras, and really got into taking photographs of musicians, but realized that you really can't capture great shots, especially from far away, zooming in on musicians with the phone. So a couple of years ago, I stepped up my game and bought a camera and started shooting, a lot of shows. I have great access at Space. I also shoot at Legends and Fitzgerald's and, whenever I go to the Green Mill, I try to shoot, bring a camera. And I decided to put together an exhibit of my photographs. And this exhibit is going to feature pretty much all blues and jazz people. A lot of black and whites, which I really love. I love black and white photography. And they're going to be over 30 prints, mostly 18 by 24s, a couple really big ones, and some 8 by 10s as well. You mentioned Maurice Better Brown. He's in the show. I got a great black and white shot of him. A lot of Delmark artists like Jimmy Burns and Willie Buck and Mike Wheeler and Cheryl Youngblood. Jazz musicians like Greg Ward and John Schofield. And it's a pretty eclectic show, and I'm really excited for people to see my work.
Dave Specter, did you shoot this mostly on film, or is there some digital too?
Right now, I'm only shooting digital. Yeah, it's funny. A couple of younger people in their 20s that work at Space and work at our restaurant union are into film photography. It's
all the young people. My kid is harassing me all the time. Dad, just shoot the film, don't use the digital.
Yeah,
I like digital. I got to tell you, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, digital photography is it's I guess you draw a correlation between listening to CDs or listening to vinyl. Taking digital or shooting film. There are some definite advantages to shooting film, but in terms of ease, and man, I don't miss the smell of a darkroom. I'll tell you that.
Well, this exhibit's going to be up at Delmark Records, and tell people where that is and how long it will be up, because it's really something people should see.
Yeah, Delmark Records is near Irving Park in Western at 4121 North Rockwell. 4121 North Rockwell. And they have been using their front hallway space as a gallery. And I think this is the 6th or 7th or 8th gallery show. A great photographer named Michael Jackson, who also writes for Downbeat, just had an exhibit up of his jazz shots. And it opens June 1st. The opening party is this Saturday night from 5 to 8. And the show will run throughout the summer. I think it ends on September 1st. So if you pop in the studio, during, regular business hours, so to speak, and somebody's there, they'll let you in and let you have a look.
Dave Specter, it's great talking to you. Let me throw this at you. Any advice or information for music lovers in general and young musicians coming on up?
Advice for younger musicians: just immerse yourself in as much of the music you love as you can. Listen to the recordings, study the recordings, see as much live music as you can. Go back and discover the roots of the music that you love. And, just play from your heart. And one of the greatest pieces of advice any musician ever gave me, and a number of the older blues guys told me this, is take your time. There's so much blues now that involves this flashy, quote unquote, shredding bullshit that to me is, it's all about histrionics, and it doesn't speak to my soul. I like the whole point of the blues is the feeling and the soulfulness. It's really hard for me to hear that when somebody's playing 80 miles an hour, So take your time, any kind of music. Jazz, blues.
Well, Dave Specter, it's really nice talking to you, and I'll probably see you at your opening on Saturday night. That would be, if people are listening on WLUW, that's tonight. But anyhow, June 1st at Delmark Records is the opening of the show. We'll see you there, or we'll see you at Space, and we'll play one of your tunes as we go out. Look forward to meeting you in person, brother.
Right on. Thanks for having me on. Good talking to you.
Okay.